Good day everyone, hope you're all doing really well. So we're going to do a VOD review in this video. We're only going to do floor 12 chamber 1 the first half, and hopefully you guys will find this interesting. The team that you can see here is a team you can use for all of the first halves of the current floor 12, and you can use at different varieties. So for instance, Kokomi and Sucrose is a must, but Rosaria and Yamiko you could interchange for Kaya, for official, whatever you've got on your account. Kokomi here is at C1, but C1 or C0 both work, and Yamiko is at C0, and both 4 stars are at C6. The cool thing here is Kokomi is going to be our main DPS. Yes, you've heard it correctly, main DPS. So throw away that Thrilling Tales or Dragon Slayer. She's not a jellyfish bot. Get your Yakushin ring, get whatever prototype Amber, Everlasting Moonglow if you've got one. Dust it off, use it right now, it's going to be awesome. I'll explain to you from a practical perspective some of the sort of patterns that you want to play here, not rotations but patterns, and how you sort of want to manipulate the battlefield as well, and also what you should not be doing. And yeah, hopefully you guys will enjoy this, and I'm just going to play the clip and then we'll go over it in a bit of detail. So right off the bat we cast our E of Kokomi, a quickly move with Yamiko, and a quick Sucrose animation cancel, group up the enemies, freeze them in place, there you go. There is Sucrose, and then we're going to alt Q into Kokomi, and here's the big thing that I want you guys to see. Look at that Ocean Ute Clam damage, 38, almost 38,000. There again, 37,799, very strong. We quickly space out with Yamiko, and now here's the big thing. We want Sucrose's elemental burst up. We're going to quickly animation cancel with Yamiko to avoid taking damage from these two. And now here's the big key. We want to play in an AoE around Kokomi's Jellyfish. So if the enemies are too far, we either group them closer with Sucrose, or we just hit them with range from either Kokomi or Yamiko. And here you can see our Jellyfish pretty much expired in the background. We want to group the enemies closer, see if we can get those particles. Yes, now we're going to trigger this, Kokomi's Jellyfish. And now we're just going to wait for Kokomi to come online. But in the meantime, let's just quickly reset Yamiko, and there we go. Pretty easy. And now here's a cool thing with Kokomi. Because you don't crit, you can actually manipulate the enemy's health pools like I did right there. And it is really helpful for guaranteeing outcomes. And we are pretty much close to the end right now. Here you can see I'm just being sort of just doing all sorts of funny things with Sucrose. And that is about it. At this point you could burn more of your elemental burst and so on, but if you've got some time to spare, you can just keep them for the next floor. So let's go over all of this again and think about a bit about the logic. Now the first thing that I want to point out is what not to do. So the first thing that you want to sort of see is, oops, let me quickly put the sound down. The first thing that you want to be sort of cognizant of is these two enemies that are right here at the back. So you can see if there's an enemy. Oh, let's just get the explosion away. So here's an enemy right here, and there's an enemy right there. So the reason we want to move almost like behind these guys is to draw these two in, because if they're too far, we can't scoop them up with Sucrose's elemental burst. Now yes, if we did have a Kazuha or Venti, this would have been a lot easier, but I'm assuming that from an F2P or a low spender perspective, just by playing a bit clever, you could use Sucrose very effectively. So that's the first key item that we've got to sort of handle. The second big item is you might be tempted to sort of stand here right in the middle and just unleash all your abilities. So I put the Jellyfish, I'm going to use Sucrose, but this is a problem with Sucrose. Unless you go a bit back a bit further, Sucrose will have like a 50-50 probability of either throwing this thing to the left or to the right, and you'll see here as a consequence you won't sometimes get all the enemies in. Her sort of what do you call it, swirl will end off prematurely, and you won't get all the enemies grouped up as nicely. So you can see here we're already not at a good outcome. At this point it just becomes very RNG. So this is not really what you want to do. I know a lot of people who just want to stand here and they want to spam their Venti Q, and then they just go Bennett Q and they just go crazy because that's what they want you to do. But with a team like this, just by playing cleverly, you can actually mitigate a lot of these things. So that is the basis of the enemy AI. So let's go back to our first clip and then just break this down slowly. So first things first, what card do we want to pick? Well, Kokomi being main DPS, we want to pick at least one health card here, and later on in the Spiral Abyss you could pick a crit rate, crit damage, or elemental burst damage, or elemental burst skill for the rest of your team. But it doesn't really matter too much. So right off the bat we're just going to sort of do this, And exactly like I said, I want these enemies to come and sort of look at me, because in essence I don't want them to just face me and stand still, because they're going to go into their cooldowns a lot quicker. In this case they're turning around at me, and the key thing here is now the animation cancel here with sucrose, and this is where things become very, very important. You don't want these enemies to enter a stance like this, because the moment they do, they become immune to being displaced. So you can see here, we already knocked them off their feet, and then we closed the distance with Rosaria here. And this is a thing that I want to point out with this team. Yeah, Miko allows us quite a lot of lateral movement around the field, and Rosaria can close in the distance. So this is quite cool about this team. You've got movement mobility that is so awesome. And you can see how I'm absolutely using a Rosaria E into Q very, very quickly. There is sucrose, and then on the PC version and on the mobile version, there is an option for you to alt press, if you alt and press 1, for instance here, you'll instantly go into Kokomi's Elemental Burst, or on mobile if you just tap the Elemental Burst icon, you'll immediately switch RIP console players. And this is the technique that I'm using here. And yeah, now all we're doing is we are using sucrose to group up the enemies into a wide AoE, and then Kokomi obviously does a bit of damage. So the damage that she does, we just quickly go back here. That should be right about this moment. You can see how powerful this is. So there's Ocean Hued Clam. So Kokomi herself, because we're swirling obviously the Hydra, we're getting the 40% resistance rate. So this is very, very strong in terms of the Hydra damage we're doing. And the Ocean Hued Clam set is doing about 37,800 damage. You can see here in an AoE onto all of these enemies. That is pretty powerful. If you just quickly sort of add that up, it is about, if my math is not mistaken, about 52,000 damage that you've just done on a single pop. It's really good. And now what we want to do is we just want to sort of look quickly, we take a quick glance at our sort of, elemental burst. If we don't have any time left here, we can just go out. But if we do have time left, we can just sort of stay in. In one of my sort of optimal practice runs, I actually managed to get this to 13 right here, in which case you would sort of just stay and damage these enemies appropriately. But once you've damaged them, we just want to sort of go right back here to the end of the field, have a safe space almost to cast our cooldowns and so on. And here you can see, I've seen that the enemies are going to sort of attack me, so go into Elemental Burst, we get those 3 iframes, because why not? And then I want to move back and then move forward, because I don't actually want to lose my positioning with Yaemiko. So this is a little technique that you can do. Move back, move forward, essentially you're in the same place, and then you can just move another step forward, and we're close to Kokomi's sort of jellyfish. And now we want to freeze these two. So the big thing that I noticed whilst I was playing is that this guy had less health than this guy, so I wanted to use Kokomi to quickly reduce his health a bit more than this guy, and because that'll just help in taking them out simultaneously. Otherwise you might end up having one of them as go into their raging mode, and then they have more health, and that just takes way longer. So here you can see this is exactly what the powerful thing is about Kokomi. You can very easily manipulate enemy health because you don't crit on your hero, so her damage outcomes are more predictable. And that is one of those subtle things that people won't tell you, but in a battle like this, and it doesn't matter how this battle would have went in any other way, it's really cool. It's a really awesome technique to be able to use with Kokomi, and it's a very advanced Kokomi tech that not a lot of people are really aware of, but it is kind of cool. And here you can see I'm just using Yaemiko to again just space around. So the cool thing about Yaemiko is as she moves around the battlefield, you actually recover a bit of stamina. So you can see here, Kokomi, obviously we're dodging, we're running, we're doing all sorts of things, we're doing cancellings, animation cancels and so on, so we're draining stamina. But Yaemiko can move stamina free, so she navigates the field and essentially allows us to get more stamina back. And now we can use that with Sucrose, do a bit of animation cancelling. And if you've noticed, here was like a bit of a trap, here was a bit of a trap. So we avoided the hydro and the frozen simultaneously. And yes, I do sort of pick this up during the battle. This is what's so fun about this floor. You've got all these multiple things hitting you from a different perspective, and keeping track of it all and being able to move is so much fun. This is like what I really enjoy about the gameplay. And yeah, this is it. We're just sort of waiting for Rosaria, and just going to sort of smack the enemies. You can see we somehow swirled Pyro, but that doesn't really matter. It doesn't actually really matter what we swirl here, but mostly we want to swirl either the Hydro or the Electro, but it's okay. And here, once again, you can see the power of freeze. We keep the one guy frozen, we reduce the other guy's health, and then we take them out simultaneously. And that is it. It's game, set, match at this point. So yeah, you could run this sort of variation that I've done here. You can see here we're trying our best to avoid some of the field damage. You can't always avoid everything. Sometimes you will be hit. The cool thing is, because Kokomi is in this team, she immediately increases the survivability of your entire team. It's almost like if, let's say, Bakekurage heals you for 6,000, it's almost like giving everyone 6,000 HP extra. It is really cool, and obviously during an elemental burst you don't have to worry about anything. Kokomi is such a utility packed character. She's got so much value that she can bring to a team. It's not just it's all these things. It's the Hydra application, being able to act as a damage source, to be able to heal your entire team, to sort of manipulate enemy health bars, to do ranged attacks. As you can see, these enemies are quite far, and Kokomi's sort of fish can hone in like on missiles. She really is such a good character, and I must also say props to Sucrose as well. She's also such a great, like, I think Sucrose is such a fun technical character to use. I think Kazuha, the problem that I've got with Kazuha when I played him in the trials and so on, he just sweeps up all the enemies and he plays the game for you. Whereas with Sucrose, you've got to be more tactile in terms of how you play animation cancel. Rosaria is great, and then obviously Yaemiko, just her ability to move around and just also interrupt the enemies. This is the thing no one speaks about, but Yaemiko hitting the enemies can sometimes interrupt their animations, and that actually buys us more time to do whatever we want on the field. It's pretty awesome. I did not rely on Yaemiko's burst, because her burst is not going to be what actually ends up doing the damage. The damage here is the combination of abilities, with Kokomi ultimately doing a lot of damage with the Ocean Hued Clam set as well. And that is it for this lengthy VOD review. If you guys have been sticking around until now, thank you so much. And if you like more of these videos, let me know down below. Cheers.